long before your birth, long before your parents or grandparents ever looked up at the night sky, a secret was already waiting above you. It has been there for thousands of years, etched in starlight, written into the vast dome of the heavens. Yet most of us never see it. We are taught to look at 12 familiar shapes in the sky, 12 signs of the zodiac that claim to define our destiny. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. A dozen symbols passed down like an unbroken chain, repeated in books, in horoscopes, in daily language. 12 is the sacred number, they tell us. But what if the story of 12 was never complete? What if, hidden just beyond the edges of common knowledge, there is a 13th gate in the sky? For centuries, whispers have drifted through the corridors of history about a forgotten constellation. The ancients called it Ophiuchus, the Serpent-Bearer. Its stars form the image of a man wrestling, not in fear, but in mastery with a great serpent. To the untrained eye, it might seem like just another scattering of lights. But to those who knew, Ophiuchus was never just a cluster of stars. It was a key, a symbol of transformation, a reminder that true enlightenment does not come from comfort, but from courage. Perhaps you've never heard its name. That is no accident. Somewhere along the path of history, Ophiuchus was quietly erased, swept aside so the zodiac would fit into the neat pattern of 12. But truth does not die just because it is ignored. The stars remain, unchanging, waiting for those willing to see. And so I must ask you, have you ever felt that something in the story you were given does not quite fit? That the categories of the zodiac, as popular as they are, sometimes miss who you really are? Maybe you've always felt just a little different, as though you were living between worlds, never fully explained by the boxes you were placed in. That dissonance, that quiet ache of not belonging, may not be your flaw at all. It may be your calling. Because Ophiuchus belongs to the ones who walk between. Imagine the scene, the deep velvet of night, a million points of light burning above, and in the midst of them, a figure holding the serpent, not to kill it, not to flee from it, but to embrace the struggle, to master it. This is the image the ancients left us, a man and a serpent entwined, a dance between danger and wisdom, fear and awakening. Every civilization that remembered this constellation understood something profound. The serpent is not only a symbol of threat, it is a symbol of renewal, healing, and hidden power. The snake sheds its skin to be reborn, and so too, those who carry Ophiuchus in their soul are called to shed illusions, to release the past, and to rise into a higher form of themselves. What if the most powerful truth about your life has been hiding in plain sight, not in the 12 signs you know, but in the forgotten 13th? For millennia, humanity has circled around the serpent's wisdom. In Mesopotamia, in Egypt, in Greece, the figure of the Serpent-Bearer appeared in myths and temples, always linked to knowledge, medicine, and spiritual power. Yet as centuries passed, the image was darkened, inverted, turned into a symbol of sin, temptation, or danger. We were taught to fear what once represented healing. We were taught to forget what once promised awakening. And in that forgetting, a part of our collective story was lost. Tonight, we begin the work of remembering. Not as astrologers chasing fortune-telling, not as skeptics dismissing the old myths, but as seekers standing at the threshold of something larger than ourselves. To hear the whisper of Ophiuchus is to feel an invitation, one that is deeply personal. It is not just about where the stars fall in the sky. It is about your willingness to confront the serpent within, your fears, your shadows, your unhealed wounds, and to hold them not as enemies, but as the very doorway through which your enlightenment must pass. The Serpent-Bearer is not merely a constellation, it is a mirror. It shows us that the battle we think is out there, against the world, against fate, against circumstance, is in truth within. The question is not whether Ophiuchus exists. The question is whether you are ready to see it. Have you ever looked at your life and wondered why the patterns of others never seemed to match your own? Why you walked through struggles that felt both isolating and transformative? Why, no matter how much you tried to fit into the molds of others, some deeper current kept pulling you toward mystery, toward healing, toward transformation? If so, you may already carry the serpent's imprint. You may already be walking the path of Ophiuchus, even if you never knew its name. This path is not easy. It asks everything of you. To wrestle with the serpent is to confront yourself. To walk with Ophiuchus is to choose growth over comfort, truth over illusion, and transformation over repetition. But those who take this path discover something astonishing. The serpent is not your enemy. It is your ally. It is the very energy that, once faced, once integrated, lifts you into a life that feels authentically your own. The time has come to remember what was forgotten, to see what was hidden in the stars, to realize that enlightenment is not a gift given by others, but a power awakened within you. Ophiuchus has always been there, silently waiting for the moment when humanity was ready to hear its call again. And now, perhaps, that moment has come. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself standing beneath a sky without city lights. A sky so vast and unbroken it feels like an ocean. The constellations emerge, familiar shapes you've seen on calendars, in magazines, in star charts. You can trace them with your finger: Leo, Virgo, Scorpio. Yet just above the line of the ecliptic, a forgotten pattern begins to glow. A man with arms outstretched, grasping a serpent that coils around him. In that vision, you realize something unsettling. The map of the heavens you were taught was incomplete. The universe has always been bigger than the story you were given. What happens in that moment is not about astronomy. It is about awakening. You begin to sense that life itself might be larger than the categories you were forced into. That maybe, just maybe, your struggles, your contradictions, your sense of not fitting are not errors, but evidence. Evidence that you are part of a story that was buried but never erased. A 13th path, a serpent's path. And if you follow it, you may begin to understand why ancient healers looked at the serpent and saw medicine. Why sages looked at its endless coiling and saw eternity. Why mystics saw in its shedding a vision of the soul's renewal. Ophiuchus gathers all of these meanings into one celestial emblem. It tells us, you are not finished. You are not broken. You are in the process of becoming. This is why Ophiuchus was feared by those who wanted control. Because if people remembered the Serpent-Bearer, they might also remember that their destiny was not confined to the rigid boxes of 12. They might discover that they carry within themselves a power to heal, to transform, to awaken, power that cannot easily be predicted or contained. So tonight, as you listen to this, I invite you to step outside of the familiar, to let go of the categories that never quite fit, to allow yourself to imagine that the universe is not finished speaking to you. Because Ophiuchus is more than a constellation. It is an invitation to courage, to healing, to a journey of shedding what no longer serves and stepping into the radiant skin of who you truly are. What if your entire life has been leading you here, to this moment, to the serpent's call, to the 13th gate? Take a breath, look inward, somewhere deep inside, beyond words, beyond belief, your soul already knows the answer. Introducing the civilization/mythic background of Ophiuchus. Every star in the sky carries a story, but some stories are louder than others. The 12 signs of the zodiac have shouted across centuries, retold in horoscopes and woven into calendars, celebrated on jewelry and tattooed onto skin. Yet behind their voices, quieter but no less ancient, lies another story, the story of Ophiuchus. To uncover it, we must travel not only across space, but back through time, into the civilizations that first looked to the heavens and saw meaning in their patterns. Long before modern astrology, long before newspapers published horoscopes or apps claimed to calculate destinies, human beings were already mapping the sky. The Babylonians, gazing across the desert night, divided the heavens into pathways that would guide kings and empires. To them, the stars were not decoration. They were the handwriting of the gods. And among these stellar inscriptions was the Serpent-Bearer, a figure standing firm, grasping the serpent in his hands. The Babylonians called him by names that have since been lost, but fragments survive in clay tablets and temple inscriptions. They knew him as a healer, a guardian, a liminal figure between chaos and order. Move westward to the sands of Egypt, and the serpent's image appears again. The Egyptians revered the serpent as a symbol of both danger and protection, life and death. The uraeus, the rearing cobra, adorned the crowns of their pharaohs, a mark of divine authority and protection. In their temples, coiled serpents encircled the solar bark of Ra, guarding the sun on its nightly journey through the underworld. To them, serpents were not simply animals, but archetypes of cosmic power. And in the figure of Ophiuchus, they saw a reflection of this duality. The man who bore the serpent not as a slave to its threat, but as a companion of its wisdom. The Greeks, inheriting fragments from Babylon and Egypt, transformed the Serpent-Bearer into a myth of their own. They called him Asclepius, son of Apollo, the god of medicine. Legends tell of Asclepius holding the serpent staff, the very emblem that still represents healing today. To the Greeks, serpents were sacred to medicine because they embodied renewal, shedding skin to reveal life anew. Asclepius, it was said, learned the secrets of resurrection from the serpents themselves. His power grew so great that he could bring the dead back to life, and this threatened the gods. In fear of humanity rising too high, Zeus struck Asclepius down with a bolt of lightning. Yet rather than erase him completely, the heavens themselves lifted him into the sky, immortalizing him as Ophiuchus, forever entwined with the serpent, forever a symbol of healing and forbidden wisdom.
Notice the pattern. In Babylon, he was healer and guardian. In Egypt, a reflection of divine authority and cosmic balance. In Greece, the very god of medicine. Across civilizations, separated by miles and centuries, the Serpent-Bearer returns. Always linked to knowledge, always bound to healing, always standing at the edge between mortality and divinity. But something happened as time passed. These symbols shifted. Serpents that once represented knowledge and life were recast as villains, as deceivers, as threats to be crushed. In later traditions, the serpent would crawl into Eden, whispering temptation, condemned to crawl on its belly. The serpent, once honored, became feared, and with that shift, the Serpent-Bearer too slipped into shadow. The zodiac was narrowed to 12, neat and orderly, easier to control, easier to commodify. Ophiuchus was left in the margins, remembered by astronomers but forgotten by the public, his deeper meanings silenced. Yet the stars themselves never obeyed our revisions.
The constellation remained, stretched across the sky, larger than many of the 12 signs that replaced it. Even when forgotten by our calendars, Ophiuchus refused to disappear. His story was too deeply etched into the collective memory of humanity to be erased. It remained embedded in our myths, resurfacing in symbols we still use. The serpent staff of medicine, the caduceus of Hermes, the endless Ouroboros swallowing its own tail. All these are echoes of the same truth, that within the serpent lies wisdom, and within those who dare to hold it lies transformation. Consider the serpent not as an enemy, but as an archetype. In the East, it rises again as Kundalini, the coiled energy sleeping at the base of the spine, waiting to awaken and ascend. In Mesoamerican myths, it appears as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a deity of wisdom and renewal. Across the world, cultures that never spoke to one another nevertheless spoke the same language of symbols. The serpent as healer, teacher, awakener, And always beside it, the figure who dares to embrace it, Ophiuchus. This is the mythic background we inherit. Not a horoscope column in the back of a magazine. Not a daily fortune telling you when to expect romance or wealth. But a profound archetype stretching across civilizations, whispering the same truth in different tongues. Transformation is not found in denial of the serpent, but in meeting it. Healing is not achieved by banishing shadow, but by embracing it. Wisdom is not gained by avoiding struggle, but by daring to wrestle with it. Now imagine what it means that this symbol, honored by the ancients, was left out of the modern zodiac. The 12 signs give us traits, categories, archetypes of personality. But Ophiuchus points to something deeper. It is not just about personality, it is initiation. It is not a sign among signs, but a doorway, a 13th gate. Think of what the number 12 has meant in human culture. 12 months of the year, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 Olympian gods, 12 apostles.
12 gives a sense of completion, a circle neatly closed. But 13 breaks that circle. It unsettles, disrupts, refuses to be contained. 13 is the outsider, the forgotten, the uninvited. And yet, it is precisely in the 13th that new possibilities are born. Ophiuchus, the 13th, is the reminder that the universe is never finished, that completion is always an illusion, that just beyond the limits of what we know lies another path waiting to be walked. In America today, we are a culture caught between science and spirit, technology and yearning. Many dismiss astrology as superstition, while others cling to their zodiac signs as anchors of identity. But Ophiuchus does not ask for belief, it asks for courage. Courage to look again at the stories we've inherited and ask, what was left out and why? Courage to see that our myths are not childish fantasies, but mirrors reflecting truths about the human soul. Courage to embrace the serpent we were told to fear, and in doing so, to awaken the healer within. When you look back at the myths of Asclepius, you see not just a god, but a warning. Those who awaken too much power, too much healing, too much resurrection, may be struck down by the forces that wish to preserve order. That is why Ophiuchus is dangerous. Not because it curses, but because it liberates. Not because it deceives, but because it reveals. And those who benefit from the world as it is have always feared revelation. So as we reintroduce Ophiuchus into our vision of the cosmos, we are not simply adding a forgotten constellation. We are reclaiming a part of ourselves. We are acknowledging that the human journey has always been larger than the boxes we tried to fit it into. We are stepping into continuity with Babylonian sky watchers, Egyptian priests, Greek healers, and countless others who knew that the Serpent-Bearer held the key to transformation. This is not just mythology. This is heritage. It belongs to all of us who have ever felt the call of something more, something beyond the neat categories, something that whispers in dreams and lingers in shadows. It belongs to all who sense that their path cannot be explained by 12 alone.
The civilization of Ophiuchus is not a city on a map. It is a memory across time. It is the echo of temples where healers worked with serpent energy, of myths where gods dared to heal the dead, of symbols carved into stone that refused to let us forget. To introduce Ophiuchus is to step into a lineage of seekers, visionaries, rebels, and healers. It is to remember that the 13th path was always part of the human journey, whether acknowledged or not. And so the question comes to you. Will you walk the forgotten path? Will you embrace the 13th gate? Will you dare to see the serpent not as an enemy, but as a teacher? Because civilizations rise and fall, myths are told and retold, constellations are renamed and reordered, but the Serpent-Bearer endures, waiting, watching, inviting. And now, perhaps for the first time in centuries, humanity is ready to listen again. To understand Ophiuchus, we must go beyond the stars, beyond the myths of gods and heroes, and step into the essence of how those who carried its wisdom might have lived. If the Serpent-Bearer was a mirror for humanity, then what kind of life did it reflect? What values did it call forth? What would it mean, in practical terms, to live as one who bears the serpent? Imagine first the foundation of their world, not cities of noise and concrete, but spaces where the rhythm of life followed the rhythms of nature. Those who walked the path of Ophiuchus did not see themselves as separate from the earth or the heavens. They lived between. Their homes were built not only with stone, but with intention. Aligned with stars and seasons, each space a sanctuary designed to balance body and spirit. Where others built walls to protect themselves, Ophiuchus built thresholds to connect, doorways of light, gardens where the human and the divine could meet. Life for them was not defined by possession, but by alignment. They asked not, "What do I own?" but "What energy do I embody?" Their wealth was measured in wisdom, in healing offered, in transformation shared. The serpent was their teacher, and so renewal was their practice. Just as the snake sheds its skin, they shed what no longer served. Old fears, old grudges, old identities, these were not carried forward. Life was a continuous spiral of rebirth. To live as Ophiuchus was to embrace change, not as a threat, but as the most sacred rhythm of existence. Communication among them was not only in words. Imagine songs sung not for entertainment, but as channels of power, tones resonating with a body like medicine. Imagine gestures, not just for movement, but for meaning. Ritual dances echoing the coiling of the serpent, hands tracing patterns of energy in the air. Their language was multi-layered, words, symbols, vibrations. To encounter them would be to feel spoken to not only by sound, but by presence. Their core value was healing. But healing to them was never only physical. It was spiritual, emotional, cosmic. Illness was not seen as a random curse, but as a message, a sign of imbalance. To heal meant to listen, to read the hidden meaning of pain, to restore not just the body, but the connection between the person and the greater whole. Their healers, inspired by the myth of Asclepius, were not feared as witches or magicians, but revered as guardians of harmony. They walked among their people with serpent staffs, not as symbols of dominance, but as reminders that wisdom coils in every shadow, waiting to be embraced. Yet Ophiuchus was not only about healing others, it was about the transformation of the self. To walk their path meant constant confrontation with inner demons. They did not run from darkness, they entered it. They did not deny fear, they wrestled it. They understood that enlightenment is not a gift, but a victory, not an escape, but an integration. This was the great struggle of Ophiuchus, to hold the serpent, to risk its bite, to endure its coils, and in that struggle to awaken a greater strength. Their community life among them reflected this courage. They gathered not to enforce conformity, but to celebrate difference. Each person's struggle was seen as a contribution to the whole. Each shedding of skin was honored as progress for all. Their rituals were collective yet personal. Circles of fire where individuals stepped forward to declare what they were releasing. Rivers where they immersed themselves to symbolize rebirth. Stars traced in silence as reminders that the cosmos itself was their ally. Their values can be summarized in 3 words: courage, healing, transformation. Courage to face what others avoid, healing that extends beyond self into community and cosmos, transformation as the ongoing rhythm of life. Contrast this with much of modern life, where we are taught to fear change, to suppress pain, to cling desperately to what is familiar. Ophiuchus lived the opposite. They trusted that the serpent's strike could also be the serpent's gift. They believed that wounds, once faced, became gateways to wisdom. They saw death not as an end, but as another skin to be shed, another step in the eternal spiral of existence. Architecturally, their spaces would have reflected these beliefs. Temples aligned with stars, healing centers built around sacred springs, places where serpents themselves might have been allowed to move freely as living symbols. The environment itself was an extension of their values, flowing, renewing, always in dialogue with heaven and earth. If you imagine walking among them, you might feel an atmosphere unlike our own. Not tense, not distracted, but charged, alive, humming with unseen energy. You would see people unafraid of silence, comfortable in mystery, committed to practices that today we might call meditation, energy work, or ritual. You would feel the absence of fear around the serpent, the absence of shame around struggle. What you would sense most of all is authenticity, each person striving to live as their true self, not the mask expected by others. This way of life did not make them immune to suffering. On the contrary, it meant they were constantly confronting it. But for Ophiuchus, suffering was not a punishment, but a teacher. Every challenge was an opportunity to shed another skin. Every loss was a portal to deeper wisdom. Every shadow was an invitation to more light. That is why Ophiuchus stands apart from the other signs. Where Aries charges, Taurus builds, Gemini speaks, Cancer nurtures, Leo shines, Virgo orders, Libra balances, Scorpio penetrates, Sagittarius explores, Capricorn climbs, Aquarius innovates, and Pisces dreams. Ophiuchus transforms. It does not fit neatly among them because it was never meant to. It was meant to show the cost and the reward of true growth. It was meant to remind us that destiny is not in traits assigned at birth, but in the choices we make to face or flee the serpent within. So what does it mean for us, here and now, to reclaim these values? It means daring to live authentically, even when it unsettles others. It means embracing healing, not only as medicine, but as a way of being, healing our wounds, our relationships, our planet. It means accepting transformation as the rhythm of life, no matter how uncomfortable. To live Ophiuchus today is to walk through fire willingly, knowing that on the other side you will be reborn. Perhaps this is why the constellation was left out, because a life of Ophiuchus cannot be marketed easily. It does not promise easy fortune or guaranteed compatibility. It does not tell you that you are perfect as you are. It tells you that you are becoming, that the serpent still coils within, waiting for your courage. That is a harder message, but a truer one. And so, the forgotten constellation becomes not just a star pattern, but a challenge to us all. Will we continue to live in fear of change, in denial of pain, in masks that hide our true selves? Or will we dare to live as Ophiuchus lived, courageously, openly, devoted to healing and transformation? To walk their path is to walk a narrow road, but it is also to walk the only road that leads to true awakening. This is what it means to bear the serpent. This is what it means to live the 13th path. Symbols are the oldest language humanity has ever spoken. Long before alphabets, before printed words, before science could measure the heavens, our ancestors spoke through images. A bird rising from fire became the phoenix. A spiral carved into stone became the cycle of life. And a serpent coiled around a figure became Ophiuchus. To understand this forgotten constellation, we must learn to read its symbols again, for they carry meanings that no amount of rational analysis can erase. At its heart, Ophiuchus is the union of two archetypes, the human and the serpent. The human figure represents the conscious self, the part of us that chooses, struggles, learns, and acts. The serpent represents primal energy, the unconscious, the hidden wisdom of the body and spirit. Alone, each carries danger.
The human without the serpent is fragile, disconnected, easily broken by forces greater than itself. The serpent without the human is wild, chaotic, uncontrollable. But together, in Ophiuchus, they form a synthesis, not domination, not submission, but balance. The image of the man holding the serpent is not one of violence, but of mastery, of relationship, of courage to hold what others fear. This symbol echoes across cultures. In Greece, the serpent staff of Asclepius still stands today as the global emblem of medicine.
In India, the serpent appears as Kundalini, the coiled force at the base of the spine, waiting to rise through the chakras, awakening enlightenment. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, embodies knowledge, fertility, and cosmic renewal. In Norse myth, the serpent Jormungandr coils around the world, a reminder of cycles and boundaries. Again and again, the serpent is the archetype of transformation, feared by some, revered by others. But Ophiuchus adds something unique, the human who dares to hold it. This is more than a symbol of healing, it is a symbol of integration. The serpent is no longer outside us, a monster to be slain, but within us, a force to be accepted. In this sense, Ophiuchus stands apart from other zodiac archetypes, while Aries charges forward with fire, while Virgo orders life with logic, while Pisces dissolves into dreams. Ophiuchus wrestles with shadow. It does not flee from darkness, nor does it glorify it. It embraces it as part of the journey toward wholeness. This is why Ophiuchus is often compared to Scorpio, for both are linked to transformation, yet the difference is profound. Scorpio dives into the depths, facing death, sexuality, and power, often in secrecy and intensity. Ophiuchus, by contrast, rises with the serpent in hand, confronting the same themes, but integrating them visibly, openly, for the sake of healing. Where Scorpius is the descent, Ophiuchus is the ascent. One is the plunge into shadow, the other is the climb into light after shadow has been faced. They are mirrors of each other, one necessary for the other, yet distinct in purpose. When compared with Aquarius, another sign linked to higher wisdom, the contrast is equally striking. Aquarius pours the water of knowledge onto humanity, symbolizing innovation, progress, the collective. But Ophiuchus carries a more intimate wisdom. Its knowledge is not abstract or technological, but embodied and transformative. Aquarius seeks to change society. Ophiuchus seeks to change the self. One revolutionizes the external world, the other revolutionizes the internal. Together, they show us that true awakening must be both, the inner serpent mastered and the outer waters poured. Symbolically, Ophiuchus also challenges our relationship with fear. The serpent has long been painted as the enemy, from the snake in Eden tempting humanity to venomous bites feared in the wild. Fear has always been the veil covering its wisdom. To see Ophiuchus is to pierce that veil, to recognize that what we fear most may hold the medicine we most need. The image of the human holding the serpent is a visual manifesto. Courage transforms fear into wisdom. This is a teaching as relevant today as it was in ancient times. Energy-wise, Ophiuchus represents the alchemy of opposites, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, spirit and body. Unlike signs that embody one polarity, Ophiuchus embodies the tension of holding both. It is the archetype of the healer, the shaman, the mystic who walks between worlds. In Jungian terms, it is the individuation process, integrating shadow into self. In spiritual language, it is ascension through acceptance, not denial. Consider the contrast with Atlantis, that legendary civilization often imagined as a culture of mind, technology, and ambition. Atlantis reached for the stars, but drowned in its own pride. By contrast, Shambhala, the mythical hidden kingdom, is described as a realm of heart, compassion, inner radiance. If Atlantis was the mind and Shambhala the heart, Ophiuchus is the spine that connects them. It is the channel through which the serpent rises, bridging intellect and compassion, shadow and light. Its message is not to choose one over the other, but to hold both in balance.
In this way, Ophiuchus also reflects the archetype of Christ and the archetype of the Buddha. Both faced temptation, shadow, the serpent of inner and outer trial. Christ in the wilderness confronted Satan and emerged with authority. The Buddha faced Mara beneath the Bodhi tree and emerged with enlightenment. Both were serpent-bearers in their own right, humans holding the coil of darkness without surrendering to it, transmuting it into wisdom. Ophiuchus is the stellar emblem of this same process. So what does all of this mean for us today? It means that Ophiuchus is more than history, more than myth, more than a forgotten star pattern. It is a symbolic blueprint for the kind of human being our age most desperately needs. In a world fragmented by fear, poisoned by mistrust, haunted by wounds we cannot seem to heal, the archetype of Ophiuchus reminds us that healing begins with courage. It begins by looking directly at the serpent, our traumas, our divisions, our shadows, and refusing to run. It begins by holding that serpent with steady hands, integrating its power rather than denying it. When you carry this image inside, something changes. You begin to see your struggles not as punishments, but as initiations. You begin to see fear not as a wall, but as a doorway. You begin to see yourself not as a victim of fate, but as a bearer of wisdom in the making. This is the symbolic power of Ophiuchus. It reshapes how we see life itself. This is why some say Ophiuchus is not just a sign, but a path of spiritual awakening, of wrestling with inner demons until they become allies, of shedding skins until only truth remains. It is not easy, it is not comfortable, but it is real. And in a world drowning in illusions, reality is the rarest gift of all. When we compare Ophiuchus to the cultural energies of today, the need becomes even clearer. Modern life often tells us to avoid pain, to numb it with entertainment, to medicate it, to escape it. Yet the more we avoid, the more the serpent coils in the dark, unacknowledged, unintegrated. Depression, addiction, violence, these are the symptoms of serpents ignored. Ophiuchus shows another way: confront, integrate, heal. It tells us that the very energy we fear may become the medicine we need. And so, the Serpent-Bearer stands across time as both warning and invitation. A warning that avoidance breeds shadow, but an invitation that courage awakens wisdom. A reminder that enlightenment is not a flight from darkness, but the art of holding it in the light. This
is the symbolic meaning of Ophiuchus. This is why it matters. Not because it changes the dates of the horoscope columns, not because it disrupts the neat 12, but because it reveals a deeper layer of human destiny. A destiny not of traits, but of transformation. Not of labels, but of courage. Not of fear, but of healing. Ophiuchus asks us to step beyond the circle of 12, to walk into the 13th gate, and to remember what our ancestors knew. The serpent is not your enemy. The serpent is your teacher. And when you dare to learn, you awaken the healer within. Every great story has its beginning. Every civilization remembers a time when the heavens were closer, when wisdom was pure, when the world was still in harmony. To speak of Ophiuchus is not only to speak of a constellation, but of an origin story, a tale of where the serpent's wisdom came from, and of the golden age when it guided humanity. The ancients did not believe that wisdom was born on earth alone. They looked to the skies and saw teachers. In Mesopotamia, priests spoke of knowledge descending from the stars. In Egypt, myths told of gods arriving from the heavens to teach agriculture, medicine, and the mysteries of the soul. In Greece, Asclepius himself was said to be born from Apollo's union with a mortal woman, half divine and half human, destined to bridge worlds. Across cultures, the Serpent-Bearer was described not as an invention of men, but as a gift, a messenger, a link between humanity and the divine. Perhaps this is why Ophiuchus was placed among the stars, to remind us that the wisdom of the serpent was not ours to own, but ours to receive. Its origins lay beyond us, in forces greater than the human mind, yet close enough for the human spirit to grasp. To the ancients, the constellation itself was proof. Here was a figure larger than life, forever inscribed in the heavens, holding the serpent as if to say, "This is the power you are called to master." In its golden age, Ophiuchus was not forgotten, it was honored. Imagine temples built where the stars of Ophiuchus aligned overhead, rituals timed to its rising in the sky. Imagine healers invoking its name, drawing strength from its story, shaping their art of medicine and their practices of spirit after its archetype. In those times, the serpent was not feared. It was revered as the great initiator. To face it was to grow. To walk with it was to be transformed. The golden age of Ophiuchus was a time when healing was not fragmented, but whole. Today we divide body from mind, spirit from science, medicine from meaning. But in those ancient days no such divisions existed. To heal the body was to heal the soul. To face the serpent's poison was to find its antidote. Every illness carried a message, every wound a teaching, every crisis an initiation. And those who walked in the wisdom of Ophiuchus were trusted to read these messages, to hold the serpent with steady hands, and to return its wisdom to the people. Legends of Asclepius recall him bringing the dead back to life, a feat so powerful it alarmed the gods. Whether myth or memory, the essence remains. The Serpent-Bearer's golden age was an age of resurrection, not only literal, but symbolic. To be touched by Ophiuchus was to be given a second chance, to rise again after loss, to shed what was broken and emerge renewed. In this way, Ophiuchus was the constellation of hope, not shallow optimism, but the deep assurance that no death, no failure, no ending was final. Think of the serpent itself, endlessly shedding its skin. In every culture that honored Ophiuchus, this act was seen as the purest symbol of the human journey. Life was not linear, but cyclical. We are born, we struggle, we shed, we renew. Each cycle brings us closer to truth. Each shedding strips away illusion. In the Golden Age, people lived by this rhythm, unafraid of change, unafraid of loss, because they knew renewal would follow. The serpent's wisdom also shaped their understanding of power. While later ages came to fear serpents as symbols of deception or domination, the Golden Age of Ophiuchus revered the serpent as the keeper of balance. Its venom could kill, but also heal. Its bite could destroy, but its essence could cure. This duality was not contradiction, it was the key. Power is always both danger and gift. To live in balance was to respect both sides, to never abuse the serpent's energy, but to channel it with humility and wisdom. In this age, Ophiuchus was not an outsider. It was central. It shaped the myths of medicine, the architecture of temples, the rituals of initiation. It reminded humanity that healing and transformation were the highest callings, that to master the serpent within was greater than conquering enemies without, that enlightenment was not an escape from life, but a deeper engagement with it. Can you imagine what it must have felt like to live in such a world? To wake each day knowing that your struggles were sacred, that your wounds carried wisdom, that your fears were invitations, not enemies. To live among people who honored transformation as the essence of life, who saw every shedding of skin as progress, every trial as a gift. That was the Golden Age of Ophiuchus, an age where humanity trusted the serpent's wisdom instead of suppressing it. And yet, as always, Golden Ages are fragile. For every culture that embraced Ophiuchus, there came a time when fear gained the upper hand. The serpent, once a symbol of renewal, was recast as a threat. Healing, once sacred, became feared or dismissed. The 13th gate, once open, was closed. But before that fall, there was a time when humanity walked closely with the Serpent-Bearer. And in that time, they tasted a wisdom we are only now beginning to rediscover. To remember the Golden Age of Ophiuchus is not nostalgia, it is empowerment. It reminds us that humanity once knew how to live in harmony with shadow, how to embrace transformation, how to walk with courage and healing at the center of life. And if we knew it once, we can know it again.
This is why myths matter. Not because they are literal history, but because they preserve truths too important to lose. The Golden Age of Ophiuchus is not simply a story of the past. It is a memory encoded in the human spirit, waiting to awaken when we are ready. It tells us that the path of the Serpent-Bearer is not a fantasy, but a reality lived by those who dared to embrace it, honored by civilizations that remembered it, and offered again now to us in a time when we need it most. The origin of Ophiuchus is our origin. The golden age of Ophiuchus is our inheritance. And to remember it is to step once more into the wisdom we were never meant to forget.
Every golden age carries within it the seed of its own ending. What rises must one day fall, and what shines most brightly often casts the longest shadow. So it was with Ophiuchus. For centuries, the Serpent-Bearer stood as a guide, a healer, a symbol of renewal. But time has a way of reshaping stories, and fear has a way of silencing truths too powerful to be controlled. The decline of Ophiuchus did not happen all at once. It began quietly, as shifts of meaning, subtle at first, but growing more forceful with every generation. The serpent, once the emblem of healing, was retold as the emblem of danger. The duality that had been embraced, poison and cure, shadow and light, began to narrow into fear. Humanity forgot the balance and chose one side of the story. The serpent became the villain. And with that, the bearer of the serpent faded into the margins.
Religions rose that sought order above all. To them, the serpent was temptation, the whisper of sin, the enemy of obedience. Ancient myths were rewritten. Where once serpents circled crowns as signs of authority, they now slithered into gardens as deceivers. Where once the serpent's bite was a test of courage, it became a curse to be feared. With each retelling, the wisdom of Ophiuchus was diminished. It was no longer the path of transformation, it was recast as a path of danger. Astrology itself was reshaped. The neat symmetry of 12 gained favor over the unsettling presence of 13. 12 was manageable, divisible, orderly. 12 months, 12 tribes, 12 apostles. 13 was disruptive, unpredictable, untamed. And so the 13th constellation was quietly removed, set aside, forgotten. Calendars erased it, horoscopes ignored it, and the Serpent-Bearer slipped into obscurity. But we must ask, was this forgetting truly accidental, or was it deliberate? History shows that when knowledge empowers, it is often hidden from the many and reserved for the few. To teach people that their struggles, their wounds, their shadows could become sources of power was to give them freedom. And freedom cannot easily be controlled. Better, perhaps, for those in power to demonize the serpent and erase the bearer than to allow people to awaken their own healing.
The disappearance of Ophiuchus also reflects a deeper pattern, humanity's fear of transformation. For the serpent's way is not easy. It demands that we confront what we fear, that we shed what we cling to, that we walk willingly into death and rebirth. Many chose another path, the path of denial, of illusion, of clinging to what is familiar. And so, as a collective, humanity turned away. The 13th gate closed, not because the stars moved, but because our hearts did. And yet Ophiuchus did not vanish. The constellation remained in the sky, unmoved, unchanged, indifferent to our forgetfulness.
Its stars continued to shine above deserts and oceans, above cities and forests, waiting. Even as the serpent was cursed in stories, even as the bearer was erased from charts, the symbol endured. Hidden in plain sight, it was never truly lost.
Traces of its wisdom survived in secret. In the healing arts, the serpent staff of Asclepius continued as the emblem of medicine, even if many forgot why. In mystical traditions, serpent energy remained as Kundalini, rising through the spine. In alchemical texts, the Ouroboros, the serpent swallowing its own tail, persisted as the symbol of eternity and renewal. Even in the West, where the serpent was feared, these fragments of its truth could not be extinguished. They slipped through the cracks, reminders of a wisdom waiting to be remembered. But the loss was still profound. With the decline of Ophiuchus came a decline in how we understood healing. No longer was it a sacred act of integration. It became something to be controlled, dissected, reduced. No longer was suffering seen as initiation. It was dismissed as meaningless or punished as weakness. The serpent, once held with courage, was banished to the shadows, where it grew more monstrous in imagination than it ever was in truth. Humanity, in denying Ophiuchus, denied a part of itself. This is why we live in a world today that fears transformation. We cling to permanence, though life is impermanent. We deny shadow, though shadow always follows. We suppress pain, though pain speaks the language of growth. Our forgetting of Ophiuchus is not just a historical accident. It is a spiritual wound. We lost not only a constellation, but a way of being. And yet, even in decline, the Serpent-Bearer whispers. Perhaps you have felt it yourself. A dream of snakes that left you unsettled. A struggle in your life that felt strangely sacred, as if more was happening than what could be seen. A moment when you confronted fear and found, to your surprise, that it gave you strength. These are echoes of Ophiuchus, breaking through the silence of centuries, calling you to remember what was once forgotten.
The disappearance of Ophiuchus also reveals a paradox. What is erased often grows stronger in secrecy. Hidden knowledge develops resilience. Forgotten truths await rediscovery with even greater force. Just as the serpent sheds its skin, the wisdom of Ophiuchus has shed the skin of obscurity, preparing to rise again. The more it was suppressed, the more its return carries power. So here we stand, at the edge of remembering. Looking back, we see the decline, the demonization of the serpent, the erasure of the 13th sign, the loss of a worldview that embraced healing through transformation. But looking forward, we sense the possibility, the serpent coiled, waiting, the bearer ready to rise again. The stars did not forget. The serpent did not die. Ophiuchus was never destroyed. It was only hidden, waiting for humanity to be ready once more to hold its truth. And maybe, just maybe, that time is now. There comes a point in every story when the past stops being only memory and begins to speak directly to the present. Ophiuchus is not merely a forgotten constellation, not merely a myth from the days of Babylon, Egypt, or Greece. It is a living symbol, and its power returns precisely when the world needs it most. If it was hidden, if it was erased, then its reappearance now is no accident. For in times of great transition, humanity looks again to the heavens for guidance. Look at the world around us today. We are surrounded by knowledge, yet starved for wisdom. We have medicine that can prolong life, but we lack healing that can renew the soul. We build technology that connects us instantly across the globe, yet we feel more divided and isolated than ever before. We cling to categories, political, cultural, personal, that promise identity, but often deliver only separation. In all this, Ophiuchus whispers a different way. It tells us that healing begins not with labels or systems, but with courage. Courage to face the serpent within, courage to hold it rather than flee. The message of Ophiuchus for us today is simple but profound. Transformation is possible if we are willing to embrace it. The serpent will not be denied. The shadows we try to suppress, our fears, our traumas, our collective wounds, do not disappear. They only grow stronger in the dark. The only way forward is through. And the Serpent-Bearer shows us how, not by destroying the serpent, but by holding it with steady hands, mastering it, integrating it. Perhaps you have felt this in your own life. The struggles you face are not punishments, they are invitations. The times when you felt broken may have been the very thresholds of rebirth. The fears that grip you may be the keys to your awakening. Ophiuchus calls you to reframe your story. You are not a victim of fate, you are a bearer of wisdom in the making. Every wound is a doorway. Every serpent you fear carries medicine for your soul.
Collectively, too, the message is clear. Humanity stands at a crossroads. We can continue down the path of denial, distraction, and division, clinging to illusions that keep us comfortable but unhealed. Or we can choose the path of Ophiuchus, the path of courage, healing, and transformation. This path does not promise ease, but it promises truth. It does not guarantee comfort, but it offers renewal. It asks us to face the crises of our time, climate change, inequality, alienation, not as curses to be feared, but as serpents to be mastered, each carrying within them the possibility of a greater awakening. Think of the serpent's shedding of skin. That is the process we are being called into now. Our old ways of living, exploiting nature, fragmenting society, numbing ourselves with distraction, are skins that no longer fit. They must be shed. It will be uncomfortable. It will feel like death, but it is not the end. It is the beginning of a higher form. Ophiuchus reminds us that the shedding is sacred, that what looks like collapse is, in truth, initiation. The Serpent-Bearer also speaks directly to identity. Many people feel lost, uncertain of who they are in a world of constant change. Ophiuchus tells us, you are not meant to be static, you are meant to transform. You are not defined by one fixed sign, one fixed role, one fixed story. You are a becoming. And every stage of your becoming is holy. your contradictions, your struggles, your cycles of death and rebirth. These are not flaws. They are the signature of Ophiuchus within you. And so, the message of Ophiuchus is not only cosmic, but deeply personal. It asks you to stop running from your serpent, to look it in the eye, to hold it, to learn from it. That addiction you fear, that grief you carry, that anger you hide, they are not enemies. They are serpents waiting to be transformed into medicine. To live the path of Ophiuchus is to take your deepest wound and let it become your greatest gift.
This is why the constellation returns now. Because we live in an age that desperately needs healing, not just of the body, but of the spirit. An age that needs courage to face shadow, not denial. An age that needs transformation, not repetition. The world will not be healed by more distraction, more denial, more clinging to the familiar. It will be healed by those who dare to walk the 13th path, by those who embody Ophiuchus. And so the question comes to you. Will you answer the call? Will you embrace the serpent, not as your enemy, but as your teacher? Will you shed the skins that no longer serve you, even when it hurts? Will you let your wounds become gateways, your struggles become wisdom, your shadows become light? The stars have not changed. Ophiuchus still stretches across the heavens, silent but steadfast. What has changed is us. We are the ones who forgot. We are the ones who must remember. And perhaps in this moment of global crisis and personal searching, the time for remembering has arrived. To listen to Ophiuchus now is to take responsibility for your own transformation. No one else can do it for you. No sign, no system, no savior can replace the work. But the stars remind you that you are not alone. Generations before you walked this path. Civilizations honored it. Myths preserved it. And the constellation still bears witness to it. You are part of that lineage. The Serpent-Bearer's message is yours to claim.
This is the gift of Ophiuchus to the present. Not prediction, but empowerment. Not fortune-telling, but truth-telling. Not escape, but engagement. It does not promise you an easy life. It promises you a real one. One where fear becomes wisdom, wounds become healing, endings become beginnings. One where you no longer flee from the serpent, but walk with it, hand in coil, into the fullness of who you are meant to be. The time is short, but the invitation is eternal. Ophiuchus does not shout, it whispers. And if you listen, you may hear it even now. Not in the stars above, but in the struggles within, in the call of your own soul, in the quiet knowing that you are never meant to live in fear. You were meant to transform.
The story of Ophiuchus is not only a story of the past. It is not only a myth told by ancient civilizations or a constellation drawn across the sky. It is a living invitation, reaching across time, asking one question that only you can answer. Will you awaken? We have walked together through memory and myth. We have seen the Serpent-Bearer rise in Babylonian deserts, stand guard in Egyptian temples, heal the sick in Greek sanctuaries. We have glimpsed the golden age when humanity trusted the serpent's wisdom, and we have mourned the decline when fear silenced what courage once celebrated. We have heard the serpent whisper again in the present, reminding us that healing and transformation are not luxuries but necessities, not theories but choices. And now we stand at the threshold of the final gate. The 13th gate. It is not made of stone. It is not hidden in some distant temple or buried beneath the earth. The gate of Ophiuchus is within you. It appears every time you face the serpent of your own life. It opens every time you choose courage over fear, truth over illusion, healing over denial. The question is not whether the gate exists. It is whether you will step through it. Imagine for a moment the image of Ophiuchus in the sky. A human figure, arms stretched, holding the serpent. Look closer. That figure is not separate from you. It is you. Every time you confront your shadow and refuse to run, you become the Serpent-Bearer. Every time you transform pain into wisdom, you embody the constellation. Every time you shed a skin that no longer serves, you walk the 13th path. The stars are not far away. They are mirrors of what you already carry. This is the closing message of Ophiuchus. You are not powerless. You are not broken. You are not trapped in the categories you were given. You are a being of transformation, capable of rising again and again, no matter how many times you fall. The serpent does not come to destroy you. It comes to initiate you, and every initiation is an awakening. But awakening is not passive. It is not something that happens by accident. It is a choice. The serpent will come whether you invite it or not. Life will bring you struggles, shadows, endings. The only question is how you will respond. Will you flee, or will you hold the serpent? Will you deny, or will you integrate? Will you close the gate, or will you walk through it? The world needs those who will walk through, for we are living in a time of great shedding. Old systems are collapsing. Old ways of living are breaking apart. Old illusions are being stripped away. It feels frightening, but it is also sacred. This is the shedding of a collective skin, and those who embody Ophiuchus will be the ones to guide humanity through it. Not with fear, but with healing. Not with control, but with courage. Not with denial, but with transformation. Perhaps you feel a stirring in your heart as you hear this. Perhaps you recognize the serpent in your own life, the challenge you cannot avoid, the wound you cannot ignore, the fear that refuses to leave. That is your gate. That is your serpent. And that is your chance to awaken. Do not despise it. Do not run from it. Hold it. Learn from it. Let it transform you.
The Serpent-Bearer does not conquer by force. He masters by presence. He shows us that the way forward is not domination, but integration. The serpent's venom becomes medicine. The serpent's coils become strength. The serpent's darkness becomes light. And so it is with you. What you fear most may become your greatest gift if you have the courage to hold it. So let this be your call to awakening. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now. The stars above are not waiting. The world's wounds are not waiting. Your soul is not waiting. The 13th gate stands before you. Step through it.
Step into a life where fear becomes wisdom. Step into a life where wounds become healing. Step into a life where endings become beginnings. Step into a life where you no longer run from the serpent, but walk with it, hand in coil, as an ally, as a teacher, as a guide. This is the legacy of Ophiuchus. This is the gift of the Serpent-Bearer. This is the truth that was hidden for centuries, waiting for a time such as this. Do not let it pass you by. Remember, the stars are not outside you, they are within you. The constellation of Ophiuchus is not only in the heavens, it is written in your soul. When you choose courage, you become the Serpent-Bearer. When you choose healing, you walk the 13th path. When you choose transformation, you step into the golden age, not of the past, but of the present. The ancient light is rising again. Walk gently, live from the heart, and remember, you were never meant to forget.